In 1992, the Dufferin Mall manager offered $20,000 to the city to improve the Dufferin Grove playground. The city asked, "What do playground users want?" They consulted the parents who used the Wallace Emerson Thursday indoor park. 4 neighborhood mothers got involved. These women talked to lots of other people, then rolled up their sleeves and got going. Some surprising new things happened at the park. A new basketball court, a sand pit, music, circus school, campfires with food, a children's garden, and lots of new friends. More people started coming to the park. The city's Parks and Recreation Director came out to talk to park friends and then added more staff. Toronto Mayor Barbara Hall gave advice and support. Park friends asked city staff, could we try an experiment together, making Dufferin Grove into a community center without walls? The staff agreed. The experiment began with a public bake oven. Then there was campfire cooking with a real chef. There were 14 new gardens over a couple of years. There were music jams, celebrations, clubhouse jams in the rink house, performances, a community-built Cobb Courtyard Cafe, Friday night suppers, bikes on ice and other odd events. The Zamboni Cafe was put in the original office. And over 20 years, staff and park friends together raised about $500,000 in small grants and $1.6 million in donations for food and skate lending. Some people think that volunteers made all these things happen, but that's not true. Part-time recreation staff run 100% of all recreation programs in all of Toronto's community centres and parks. But Dufferin Grove staff had very close collaboration with park users from the beginning. This is what the staff did: running all the programs, cooking and baking, cleaning, repairs, inventory and dishes, scheduling themselves so the work would get done, keeping the books for the park donation money, working with at-risk youth, of which there were a lot in the early years, supporting and teaching new workers, supporting community ideas and events in the park, management of park crises, of which there were also a lot in the earlier years. This meant that staff did a lot of cooperative planning. Then in 2012, they were told that planning their work cooperatively was not the job of part-time staff. From now on, programming would be directed by full-time staff working out of the recreation center and by management downtown. The wading pool started to change from being a lively community meeting place to focusing mainly on all possible risks and dangers. Wading pool staff no longer did fun things on the side. They were told not to talk to other park program staff. Fewer people came to the pool. Poolside cafe donations went down by 14%. That's $7,000 less for the summer. That meant less money to put back into the park. Dufferin Grove has 3 staff with special needs and special gifts. Management said that seniority is more important than supporting those staff. In the case of food, the cooks are no longer allowed to buy snack bar supplies from the farmers market, but instead almost all food must be purchased at big stores like No Frills. The cooks have to be accompanied by a full-time staff whenever they shop for groceries. This has inflated the cost of staffing the food programs. In the case of cash handling, part-time staff are not allowed to do the bookkeeping anymore. Instead, the money goes straight into a safe and then off-site. Budget information about revenue and particularly spending is not shared with on-site staff nor with park friends. The incentive to save money shrinks. In the case of the rink, skate sharpening was often delayed, sometimes missed altogether, and staff were not allowed to buy replacements for damaged skates. Rink program staff were not allowed to call Zamboni staff directly when there were ice maintenance problems. Fewer skaters came to the rink, and revenue from the rink's Zamboni Cafe and skate lending went down by 28%. That's $17,000 over the last rink season. That meant less money to put into the skate lending and other park programs. Dufferin Grove continues to be a unique problem for city management. Jim Hart, the general manager of Parks, Forestry and Recreation, tells people that Dufferin Grove costs too much. The city can't afford it. His division's budget is over $500 million this year, counting capital costs. Many city councillors say that the city's Parks and Recreation budget has been squeezed tighter every year, and that's the reason why there's less programming and maintenance all over the city. But in reality, the budget has gone up every year, over 40% in the past 10 years. But this chart is a high-level view. High-level views don't tell us enough. We have to look at the details. Detail number 1, comparing value for money. In the case of the Wallace Emerson Community Centre, just up the road from the park, the cost of running the centre, including caretaking, was $1.5 million in 2011. The Wallace Emerson direct programming costs, covered by tax funding only, were $475,000 that year. Now, one standard of value for money is youth programming. The number of free youth indoor programs at Wallace Emerson that year were 0, and they still are. Almost no indoor programs at Wallace Emerson are free for everyone or by optional donation. Instead, the welcome policy gives strictly rationed fee subsidies. When there is no paid program in the gym at Wallace Emerson, the doors are locked. Youth are not allowed to use an empty gym unless they pay. Compare this with Dufferin Grove Park. The cost of running the programs in Dufferin Grove in 2011 was $477,000. But the direct program cost that was covered by tax funding at Dufferin Grove was $300,000. The number of free youth programs for that were 100%. Dufferin Grove is still a commons. Almost all programs at Dufferin Grove are free for everyone or by optional donation. The second detailed question, should usage affect funding? On a typical mid-season day of no special events at Wallace Emerson, we counted 725 users over the course of a whole day. On a typical mid-season day, no special events, at Dufferin Grove Park, we counted just over 1,800 users in the course of a whole day. Parks have fewer walls. They work better as community centers. General Manager Jim Hart says that the city can't afford places like Dufferin Grove Park. Recently, City Council took staff advice and voted to stop recreation staff support for community events in all parks to save money. Detail question number 3. How come we spend more public money for parks and recreation every year, but we get fewer services? How come we can afford this, Sherburne Common, the whole rather complex project that cost $28.5 million, and yet the rink house is mostly locked? Here's another example. The Queensway Fieldhouse, also at an outdoor rink, cost $1.54 million to build. It's locked most of the time. So how come we can afford those things, but not this? Can the city afford not to learn from Dufferin Grove? We think it's time to take a break from high-level planning and to research the details, what's actually happening. If you want to help us do the research, contact us at mail@celos.ca. Celos stands for Center for Local Research into Public Space. These are the picture shows we'd like to make. Donation receipts will be issued for anything you want to donate over $10. It costs between $200 and $500 to make one Prezi picture show. We want to make a show about unions and whether the union can step outside a two-tier staff system at Parks and Recreation. We want to make a presentation about fees. Everyone pays taxes, but only the people who can afford to pay extra get to use the recreation programs. Gil Penalosa calls this the reverse Robin Hood model. We want to make presentations about food in parks. How does it work? How do you build a bake oven? How do you run park cafes? Parks as public squares. We want to make some presentations about liability in sports. We want to show a realistic look at liability and risk in public space. We wanted to show how a cheap skateboard park was created and then maintained at Dufferin Grove Park. We want to talk about accessibility and access. We want to make a picture show about youth access to community centers, and another one about supporting city staff with special needs and special gifts. And another one called Finding the Key, unlocking existing community kitchens and park field houses, many of which have been locked most of the years. If you want to help us do this research, again, contact us at mail@celos.ca. This Prezi was made with the help of generous donations from David Rothberg and the Buckingham Charitable Foundation.